It was pouring that night, the kind of rain that drowns out your thoughts. I stood barefoot on the front porch, arms wrapped around myself, watching the taillights of our SUV disappear down the street. He didn't even look back. Brian was gone, just like that. He took everything. The car, the cash, even the savings we were putting away for Ryan's future. And he left me with nothing but an empty house, a 10-year-old son, and a mountain of debt I didn't even know existed. $20,000, all on credit cards under my name, all maxed out. I remember staring at the front door for hours after it closed behind him, like I was waiting for someone to say it was just a bad dream, but the silence only got louder. And when I walked into the kitchen the next morning and saw the pile of unopened bills, the final notices, the red stamps, it hit me he'd planned this. Brian had been lying for months, late nights at the office, secret phone calls, fake smiles. And then there was Vanessa, the woman he left me for. 20-something Instagram perfect, the kind of woman who thought being a boss babe meant wrecking someone else's family. I was too stunned to cry, too numb to scream. But the worst part, trying to stay strong for Ryan. My little boy didn't understand why his dad wasn't coming home. He just kept asking if everything was going to be okay. And all I could do was lie. That night I made a promise to myself I wouldn't let Brian destroy us. But I had no idea just how much I would need Ryan, and how far he'd be willing to go to save me. The days after Brian left blurred into each other like a slow-moving nightmare. Every corner of the house reminded me of the life we once had, a life that now felt like someone else's. The fridge was nearly empty, the gas tank was running on fumes, and the bank account, negative balance. I tried to hold it together for Ryan's sake. I kept smiling when I packed his lunch. I acted like nothing was wrong when I dropped him off at school. But behind closed doors, I was unraveling. Then came the calls, the credit card companies, the debt collectors, the bank. Apparently, Brian had taken out loans in my name, $20,000 worth, and vanished before the payments were due. I was legally responsible for every cent. I tried to explain, tried to tell them I was tricked, betrayed. But the system didn't care. To them, I was just a name on a contract. I started skipping meals just to make sure Ryan had enough. I pawned my wedding ring. I sold the TV, but it still wasn't enough. And one morning, standing in line at a local food pantry, something inside me cracked. I felt this wave of shame, of helplessness. I wasn't just broke, I was broken. That same week, I collapsed at work. The doctor said it was exhaustion, maybe stress-related anemia. He asked how long I'd been feeling like this, and I couldn't answer. I didn't even remember the last time I'd slept properly. They ran more tests. The nurse's face turned serious when she came back with the results. "We need to talk," she said. I was diagnosed with a chronic condition that required regular treatment. Without it, my health would slowly deteriorate. But treatment meant money, appointments, medication. Time I didn't have and money I couldn't dream of affording. That night I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the prescription bottle in my hand, wondering how I was supposed to survive. How I was going to keep Ryan fed, keep the lights on, and somehow fight a disease I hadn't even seen coming. Ryan found me crying in the dark. He didn't say a word, just wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "Mom, I'm gonna fix this. I promise." I didn't think much of it. He was just a kid. What could he possibly do? But I didn't know then. My 10-year-old son was already making a plan. At first, I didn't notice anything different. Ryan still got up for school on time, still brushed his teeth without me having to remind him. But there was a strange look in his eyes, focused, determined, like something had shifted. Then I started noticing the little things. My laptop, which usually sat gathering dust on the kitchen counter, had been moved. The browser history showed search after search. How to get a car back if it's stolen. Can a minor report a crime and custody laws when a parent is missing? My heart sank. Equal parts, terrified and touched. He was serious. I sat him down one evening, ready to scold him, gently, tell him this wasn't his burden to carry. But before I could get a word out, Ryan pulled out a notebook, pages filled with scribbles, bullet points, even diagrams. "I know where Dad and Mandy are," he said calmly, "and I know how to make them pay." I blinked stunned. "Ryan, how?" I remembered something. He continued. "The night he left, I saw him plug an address into his phone. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to make things worse, but I wrote it down. It was a town 2 hours away. He had even checked the property records online. Something about Mandy's sister owning a lakeside house there. I've also been watching videos. He added about legal stuff, like how to prove someone took money that wasn't theirs. I think if we can show he used your name without permission, we can go to the police, but we need proof. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My 10-year-old son was planning a legal ambush like he was the lead in a courtroom drama. But as ridiculous as it sounded, it wasn't wrong. He still has the car, right? Ryan asked. It's in your name. That means it's yours legally. If we get a tow company to locate it and report it. Stolen. Boom, we get it back. There was a fire in his eyes I hadn't seen in weeks. It wasn't just childish bravado. It was resolve. I want to help you, Mom. I need to help you. Please don't tell me I can't. And in that moment, I realized something painful and beautiful. My son had grown up too fast. Life had forced him to. And while I would have done anything to protect his innocence, I couldn't deny the fierce brilliance of the boy sitting in front of me. Maybe he could pull this off. Ryan called it Operation Justice. He even made a code name for me, Agent Mom and his own Shadow Hawk. He said it helped keep things fun, like a mission. But I could tell it was more than a game to him. He was all in. The first step was getting the car back. Ryan insisted we go through the legal route. He didn't want revenge, he wanted to do it right. So we visited the police department. I was shaking the whole time, but Ryan, sitting beside me in his hoodie and sneakers, held my hand steady. We told them the truth. The car was registered in my name, and Greg had taken it without my consent. I showed them the title insurance and even a report I filed months ago that I never followed up on, too emotionally drained back then. But now with Ryan beside me, I felt braver. The officer listened, nodded, took notes. You say he's staying at this address, he asked, looking at the slip of paper Ryan handed him. If the vehicle's there, we can recover it. 2 days later, I got a call the car had been towed. It was parked out front of a cottage in a lakeside town, exactly where Ryan said it would be, just sitting there like it still belonged to him. We drove out to pick it up. The car was dirty, smelled like perfume and stale fast food, but I didn't care. It was mine again. And it felt symbolic, like I was reclaiming a piece of myself. But Ryan wasn't done. Next came the bank. He had printed out copies of old joint account statements and highlighted the withdrawal. Greg made $20,000 cleared in 1 day, drained from the savings account, while I was in the hospital. I hadn't even seen the transaction until Ryan pointed it out. He had called the bank anonymously days earlier, asking what proof they'd need to flag a fraudulent withdrawal. We met with a representative this time, with me in the lead, and presented everything I showed them, medical records proving I was hospitalized at the time, and Ryan's calendar, which had the day marked with Dad left. Ma'am, the woman said, scanning the paperwork, we can escalate this for review. If the funds were taken without proper consent while you were incapacitated, there's a case for reversal. A chance. It wasn't guaranteed, but it was something. Ryan's eyes lit up when we got back in the car. See, we're not powerless. Not if we're smart. But the biggest move came next. He wanted to go to court. I looked it up. He said, if Dad abandoned us and took money without permission, that's not just wrong, it's illegal. We can file for child abandonment and financial fraud. You could even get full custody retroactively. I hesitated. This part was bigger. Scarier, messier court meant exposure. It meant conflict. But Ryan's gaze was steady. I don't want him back. Mom, I just want him held accountable. You deserve that. We met with a pro bono family lawyer a week later. She listened to everything. The disappearance, the debt, the theft, the emotional wreckage. You have a strong case, she said. And one hell of a kid. Ryan smiled but didn't gloat. He simply nodded like a soldier checking another box on a mission list. That night after he went to bed, I stared at the ceiling for hours. My son had dragged me out of the pit Greg pushed me into. He had turned pain into a plan. Operation Justice had begun, and we weren't turning back. Ryan was quiet the entire ride home from the lawyer's office, staring out the window, like he was watching the next move unfold in his mind. That night, he knocked on my bedroom door, holding a notebook, the one he called Mission Log. It's time to set the trap, he said calmly. I raised an eyebrow. Trap. He grinned. Don't worry, Mom. It's not illegal, just smart. Ryan's plan was as bold as it was brilliant. We weren't going to chase Greg anymore. We were going to bait him. The goal, get Greg to reveal his intentions in writing, or on record, something usable in court, something that would show he never intended to return, never cared about the damage he caused, and still believed he could walk away untouched, and we would use his own arrogance against him. Step 1, I sent Greg a message. Calm, neutral. I told him the car had been recovered and I was speaking to the bank and legal representatives about the money. I didn't accuse him of anything, just said I was gathering information to make things right. He replied within minutes. You seriously think you can touch that money? Good luck. You'll need it. You should be thanking me for walking away instead of dragging you down with me. Ryan's eyes lit up when he read it. He's cracking. Then Ryan had an idea. He created a fake Facebook profile. Someone who looked like a mutual friend from Greg's hometown, a woman named Kendra Wallace. Her profile had just enough photos and shared connections to look real. She messaged Greg with a flirty hello. Greg took the bait. Over the next few days, Kendra and Greg messaged back and forth. Greg bragged about his new life, about Mandy, and even how he had left his ex with debt and a pile of hospital bills. Ryan screenshot every word. He never said he was spying. He said he was collecting receipts. But then came the final piece. He'll never agree to a confrontation, Ryan said, unless he thinks he's in control. So I sent Greg one last message. If you want to avoid court, meet me face to face. Just one conversation. No lawyers, no police. Just closure. Greg, of course, took the bait. He picked the location. A bar downtown he always liked, loud and full of distractions. He was expecting the old me, scared broken, willing to settle. But this time I wasn't alone. I walked in, wearing the same coat I'd worn the night he left. It felt symbolic. I sat at the corner booth. Greg arrived 10 minutes late smirking, like he'd already won. So, he said, sliding into the seat across from me, "What's this all about? Regrets? Or just lonely?" I didn't flinch. "You took my car, my savings, my son's safety, and you think I want you back." He laughed. "You won't win anything in court. They always side with the guy who walks away clean." That's when I nodded to a man at the bar. He stood up and flashed his badge. Private investigator Ryan had hired him. Well, technically I did, but it was Ryan's idea. The whole bar was wired. Every word Greg said was recorded. Greg froze. "You're kidding." I stood up slowly. "You should have picked a quieter place. Then again, maybe you wanted an audience." The investigator handed me a thumb drive. Everything recorded, everything admissible. Greg stormed out muttering threats, but it didn't matter. We had the evidence. That night, Ryan and I sat on the couch, mission log between us. He checked off the last box on the page, trap executed. Then he looked up at me. He always thought he was the smartest person in the room. I smiled. He forgot he was dealing with a 10-year-old genius. Ryan shrugged. He underestimated both of us. And just like that, the trap was closed. The aftermath of the trap hit harder than we expected. The court hearings started soon after the bar confrontation. Greg tried to spin his story, but we were ready. Every text, every message from the fake Facebook profile, every confession he made to Kendra, they were all presented in court as evidence. Greg's face turned pale as the recordings played, his arrogant smirk slowly fading. The lawyers couldn't help him anymore. The evidence was undeniable. But it wasn't just the legal victory that hit him. The hardest, it was the realization that he couldn't control the narrative anymore. In his mind, he had always been the one in power. Now he was just a man trapped in a lie of his own making. "Greg Henderson, you are hereby ordered to return the full amount of the stolen savings to Ms. Samantha Carter and provide full compensation for damages caused by your actions." The judge announced, her voice as firm as the gavel that followed. "Additionally, your actions will be reviewed for criminal prosecution." Greg sat in silence, the reality settling in. His new life was collapsing around him. There would be no more easy escapes, no more running to Mandy. He had no idea what was coming next. His world was falling apart, and he was too stunned to do anything but sit there defeated. Outside the courtroom, I felt a sense of victory I hadn't expected to feel, but it wasn't the kind I'd imagined. It was more like relief. The weight had been lifted, but the damage was still there. My life had been completely uprooted, my trust shattered. I had a long way to go before I could truly feel like myself again. Ryan, however, had a different reaction. He was sitting next to me quietly, watching the final moments of the trial. He wasn't gloating, he wasn't even smiling. He was simply calm. "You did it, Mom," he said, looking up at me with those wise eyes. "We did it." I smiled and nodded. We did. Greg's downfall wasn't just about money or revenge. It was about showing him in the world that people like him couldn't get away with it. That even when someone tried to break you, you had the power to stand up, fight back, and take control. Ryan had shown me that. He had made me believe again that justice wasn't just a dream. It was real, and it could be done. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and meetings with the lawyers, but there was also a sense of healing. Greg's trial wasn't over yet. There were still consequences to face for his betrayal, and Mandy wasn't off the hook either. But for now, I was just grateful. Grateful that the worst was over, that I had a plan, and that most importantly, I had Ryan by my side. We walked out of the courthouse together, hand in hand. The sun was shining, and for the first time in months, I felt like there was hope. Greg had underestimated me, and he had underestimated Ryan. The fallout had just begun, and it was going to be spectacular. Life after the storm wasn't easy, but it was ours to rebuild. The financial settlement from the court case had given us a fresh start. Greg had been forced to pay back the $20,000 he'd stolen, along with additional damages. The lingering weight of the debt that had once suffocated me was finally lifted. But that wasn't the only change. What I'd gained wasn't just monetary, it was freedom. It was peace. It was the chance to finally reclaim the life I deserved. Ryan, though, had already moved forward. He'd always been resilient, but now there was a quiet confidence in his steps that was hard to ignore. He'd navigated this mess better than I had, and he wasn't just healing, he was thriving. School had become his sanctuary again, a place where he was finally excelling, not only academically, but socially. He'd even made new friends, something that seemed impossible when we first moved. As for me, I was starting over too. I didn't rush into anything. No new relationships, no major life decisions. Instead, I focused on rediscovering myself. I started taking long walks in the park, reading books I'd always put off. And most importantly, rebuilding the trust I'd lost in myself. There were days when I still felt the ache of betrayal, but they were fewer. I found strength in my independence and my ability to manage on my own and in my role as a mother. Ryan and I also made the decision to leave our old apartment, the one where all the bad memories lived. We found a small house on the outskirts of town, away from everything that had once tied me to the past. It wasn't much, but it was ours. There we started fresh together, just the two of us. I knew that my life was far from perfect, but for the first time in a long time, I could see the possibilities ahead. I wasn't defined by what had happened to me. I was defined by what I was capable of, what I could create, and what I would never settle for again. I looked at Ryan one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. "We did it," I said softly. Ryan smiled, his eyes filled with wisdom beyond his years. "Yeah, we did. We're gonna be just fine, Mom." And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed him. Just as life seemed to be falling into place, a letter arrived one morning, addressed to me, stamped with an unfamiliar return address. Inside a single sheet of paper, with a message I've been watching. "It's not over. Greg." My hands trembled as I read it. The calm I'd fought so hard for, the peace we'd finally found, was suddenly in jeopardy. Was this a warning, a threat, or was it just another desperate attempt to control me from a distance? Either way, it didn't matter. I had already learned one crucial lesson: never underestimate the power of a mother and her son. And this time, we were ready.